Browns 0-8 at home. Just sad.
I haven't heard you this down since Dr. Brown got fired. It's a game that we were in, and it's a game that we just don't finish.
I don't want to watch anymore.
Why? Why does that happen? I'm so sick of watching those plays.
0-16.
I definitely do not want to watch it all 22.
That's up and down to me. That looks like dysfunction. Welcome back, Survivors. Episode 57, Season 3. This is Surviving the Season. I am your host, Adam. Greg is here.
Yo! Welcome back.
Welcome back. It's been a couple weeks. We got some catching up. It's been 10 days. You're right. It's been a week. We got a special guest, J. Cosmo, John Colosimo, at J. Cosmo on Twitter, JCOZMO. He is a writer at waitingfornextyear.com and co-host of This BelieveLand is Your Land, Johnny Cos. Thanks for coming on, dude.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's a good day for it. We got some current events happening, and I'm just glad to be on for the day that those broke.
You're talking about the R. Kelly thing, I take it.
Yeah. The worst person in the world. I think we were talking about owners in the last. Remember, I think, yes. Greg, we were talking. Basically, we're rooting for 32 terrible people.
Yeah, you said they are all terrible, which I think is, if you want to lump them all in as terrible, I'm sure there's one or two that are good people, but if you want to say they're all terrible, you were sure that Robert Kraft is officially a terrible person, I think.
New England Patriots owner was charged today for soliciting sex at a massage parlor in Jupiter, Florida. Of course it's in Florida because we are garbage.
Congratulations being a Floridian.
Yeah. I'm not putting that in my bio.
The cynic in me is just not really, sad to hear bad Patriots news.
I know, right? Yeah.
We can't joke too much about it, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a wet blanket that I'm not afraid to throw over the Patriots fans' heads right now.
Oh man, they got an awful lot of controversy. For as much controversy as that surrounds that organization year after year, I mean, you think about the history. Aaron Hernandez, Deflategate, Spygate, all these different things, and they just keep winning games, man. Bill Belichick does not care about outside noise. That much we know for sure.
Yeah, let's win a Super Bowl and get like 3 or they got 2 third-round compensatory picks. I don't know how these teams do it, where they keep winning games. The Rams got a bunch of compensatory picks, like. The Ravens.
I don't even understand how the Rams got compensatory picks, because it seemed like they signed a ton of players this year. It doesn't even make sense.
Trades. They traded for quite a few of those. They traded and then signed extensions for most of those guys. That's probably how that worked. I don't know if the trading for guys and then extending just totally circumvents that process.
I think it does.
Just free agent signings versus free agent exits.
Yeah, good point. Good point. I didn't think, because just initially looking at that, I was like, how the hell do they get though? Because it seemed like they really turned their roster over pretty good. I mean, not a ton of, but some big name players on there. And then, it makes sense for the Patriots because they just do not re-sign guys.
Right.
The left tackle they filled him in with a guy who, wasn't very good for, I believe, the 49ers, Trent Brown. And who played good enough, they just move on. They just add a guy, move on. Everything's good. They might struggle at the beginning of the year every year. Bill Belichick gets them in line, and next thing you know, they're winning a Super Bowl again. It drives me nuts.
Yeah,
I was just talking to Jack Duffin about this the other day. People don't realize how few players they ever give a veteran contract to. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Over his whole career, he's done this. So you're 100% spot on there. So few people get a veteran deal. And if they do, it's never their top best picks. They don't. It's those mid-range guys, or if they get a guy that's good and he's going to take a free market discount, versus what he would have made. But you're 100% right. They just keep reloading.
Yeah, you keep re-signing Tom Brady. Okay, so that might be what the Browns do. We keep re-signing Baker Mayfield till the end of time, till he's 50 years old. Other than that, they sign, like Julian Edelman is probably one of the most underpaid receivers in the history of NFL. If you look at his contract of what he's made, Jarvis Landry is making as much as Edelman in the first 3 years of Landry's contract with the Browns will make as much money as what Edelman's made for his career. That's hard to believe. That is hard to believe. Right? I mean, if either he needs to fire his agent or he just only cares about winning, and I'm talking about Edelman here. Like, good God, he's ridiculous.
And Tom Brady's probably taken $100 million worth of discounts
for
them over the years.
I think he only made like $15 million this year because he had this. It's all incentive based, and he didn't hit like any of the incentives. So I don't think he made that much money, but it helps to be married to a rich supermodel, and you don't need the money because you've been in the league.
That's what you think. That's what you think until we find out this other person with Robert Kraft ends up being Tom Brady. But there's a bigger name than Robert Kraft. What if we find out it's Tom and they were getting the couples massage?
We're gonna get another incident like Tiger, man. Somebody's gonna get clubbed.
Yeah. By a supermodel, no less. Yeah.
Right.
History goes full circle, people.
Let's talk about that re-signing. Okay, so the Browns, we have a couple guys we need to re-sign here. And the word on the street today was Greg Robinson is in the works of getting a deal. John, have you had a chance to think about what you where you at with Greg Robinson, and have you had a chance to think about what you would pay him?
Yeah, definitely. I think that he was much better than what I expected when they picked him up in the first place. I think a lot of that is scheme related. To give a lot of credit to the offensive staff for kind of hiding the tackles those last 8 games, but I mean he was serviceable in that system. Definitely somebody who I'd be looking to replace through the draft. Maybe not this year, but eventually. And I'm interested in signing him. And that's not something I would have said when they picked him up last year. I was wondering what they were thinking. But at this point, like I'd probably look to get him for a 2 or 3 year deal. Nothing over 2 years guaranteed. And I thought maybe you could do something for around, 5 or 6 million. Jack Duffin over at Paul Brown disagrees. He thinks that he'll be much closer to 10 than that. And that sounds crazy to me, but.
You got to let him hit the market, to see what he would pull from other teams, and then see if you can get the, we gave you a shot here in Cleveland discount.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just going through like Bobby Massey got re-signed to the Bears 4-year, $32 million. This is already in this year. So I guess that that they're gonna probably base it on somebody like that. That's probably a little rich, $8 million. I don't think he's gonna get $10 million per year. I mean, you look. Here's the thing that worries me about him, and I know he gave up 1 sack in the last 9 games or whatever. But if you look at like his PFF grade, it was average. And you look at his penalties, like he's consistently, since he's been in the league, he gets penalized often. And he did the same thing this year. Now he blocked well, like you said, scheme related, probably helped out big time. But he played by far the best he's ever played in his career, and it was just average. And then to go into next season and go, well, we got this guy who played the best he's ever played, and it was just average, and we're going to be fine there. That's just hard for me to swallow. And I think you have to either attack this in the draft, or you have to at least find a competent player, free agent, to give him like a real test to earn that spot. I'm not looking at what's the other guy that started out the year? His name's slipping my mind.
Harrison.
Yeah, I mean, what are we expecting from Desmond Harrison? Like he's going to come back and all of a sudden, find a resurgence and blow Greg Robinson out of the water? I doubt that. I think looking at the free agent market, there's some names on there. I mean, Trent Brown, one we already talked about with New England, is going to be a free agent. Are they going to re-sign him? You never know with New England. Juwan James, another name. He plays the opposite side, but then it gives you the flexibility. If you want to move, what's his name on the right side over to left? I mean,
Hubbard.
Hubbard. So there's different options of what we can do here. I'm just not completely sold on Greg Robinson as like long-term answer. But like you said, 2-year deal, good, $5 million. Like bring him back for that. That's backup money, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
That's right
I think Hubbard might be getting close to 7, if I remember right.
Adam usually has that up. I don't know if he's got it out.
Yeah, hold on. Let me do my job.
It's something around it. Another, Darrell Williams, who I believe tore his ACL this year with Carolina. He's another one that's a free agent. That's a name out there. There's a couple other guys. I just don't think you have to settle. Tampa Bay. Donovan Smith, he's a free agent. They acted like they're going to re-sign him, but there's so much up in the air here on, until we know who's getting re-signed, what's really going to be there for free agents. And then once you get your free agents, now we're talking about draft, I think, right. Where are you at with that, John? I feel like no matter what, we need to get a guy in the draft to play tackle. Even if you get it late, get a developmental guy. What's your feelings?
Yeah, I'm going to interrupt you just for the Chris Hubbard numbers. 6.15 this year. Right now, you're looking at 3.2 dead.
Uh-huh.
So nothing guaranteed, though. So 3.2 dead or 6.15 to play, 6.15 to play in 2020.
Okay. I mean, yeah, if you gave Greg Robinson that kind of contract, it's probably not bad. What's the when can you end that one, Adam? After this year?
Out next year.
It's 3.2 dead now. It would just be 2.4 dead next year. If he's on the roster on like March 15th, his 2019 salary guarantees. So
okay,
you're not gonna take it down to the the end of training camp and then get rid of him. He's getting paid at that point. So you'd be looking at 10 million dead.
Makes sense.
I think it makes sense to look at that, the O-line as a whole, over the next few years. You got a Treader who played pretty damn well this last year. He's still young. You can only really afford so many veteran contracts for your, in a position group at all, really. So, I've definitely been, you asked about the tackles in the draft. I've been a pretty big proponent of looking at tackle early. Yeah. And actually, I think this is rounding out to a pretty darn good tackle class. I think 2 months ago, people were questioning that. I think it's a pretty darn good class. So
I agree with you.
I think there's guys there to be had if we want to invest in that. And I think we should. I think ultimately neither Hubbard or Greg Robinson is a starting tackle on a Super Bowl Browns team. Let me put it that way.
Okay, so this year they can't be the starting tackle. You're saying?
I have no interest in. It's nice that we had this great stretch for 8 games and everybody got to not worry about tackle for 8 games. But just like you were saying, like I don't want people to start conflating that with them actually being good tackles. I think we would have found out, the hard way had we ended up in a playoff game against an Eagles or, Rams front that problem hadn't actually been solved.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's the thing. It's like Freddie made you look really good. Baker makes you look really good. And we hear that kind of thing. Well, Baker doesn't need a great offensive line to be, he doesn't need great wide receivers. It's like, why are we making Baker's job harder, people? Why can't we just make it easy on Baker? Like, I don't get it.
Right. But there is a cost to that. Like, it's great that we did some things scheme wise and did them really well. But there is a cost to that in your scheme. You don't see it, and we're having success with it, but they are making sacrifices within the scheme to do that. Yeah, sure. And cutting off maybe some of your longer routes, or making you be much more creative to get those deep shots than you might normally. So, it's not like it all just comes free. You just get rid of the ball in 2 seconds and everything takes care of itself.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. And when I look at the draft, the interesting thing about this draft is the right tackle might be better than the left tackles this year. I don't know. Have you had a lot of time to really study the tackles at all in this one?
A good amount.
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking about like a Cody Ford or a Cajuste, those look like very, very good right tackle prospects. So those are the guys you had.
Dalton Risner was another one, thinking Jawan Taylor, and it's like they might. Everybody seems to have Jonah Williams at the top of this board, and Adam and I were talking about it earlier this week. It's like, yeah, he's solid and he's got a lot of experience and he plays for Alabama. People love that, but I see him get beat. I just don't see the consistency. When I talk about like having a good offensive line, what I think about is you have to be consistent. Everybody's gonna make mistakes, but you want to do the right thing more often than not. And that's why I look at the guy like Dalton Risner from Kansas State, Jawan Taylor, and people don't want to hear tackle at 17. But if things don't work out the way that we want them to with a certain player falling, one of these guys, they take one of these guys at 17. I'm not going to be angry about that. I'm looking at one of these guys to be like a bookend tackle for a lot of years for the Browns, if that's the case. It doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% in agreement with you. I've been saying that for a while now too. To some people not being real happy with that because everybody's hyper focused on addressing defensive tackle. And this is a great class of defensive tackles. But once you slice through, the first 4 or 5, DTs and edges, I'm not as into it as some of these other guys. I just don't think it's some kind of a shoe-in to go ahead and hop on that train. Plus, when you look at kind of just following that pattern, like I feel like you're giving those guys that are ahead of you in the draft an advantage if you follow them on the same positions like that. So if you hop on the DT train as the 5th, 6th, 7th person at the table, and then that's how the second best offensive tackle in the draft drops to the second, top of the second round or something. I'd rather go ahead and zig while they're zagging, and then grab that next tier of DTs a little later in the draft. And maybe you get a guy in round 2 or 3 that could have been a first rounder in some years.
So
we've never had that problem in Cleveland because we usually are picking so fucking high that we're looking at those top tier dudes where it's like, oh, we're getting the best edge or the second best edge, or we're getting the best left tackle. Now we're at a point that we literally got to watch 16 picks fall off the board. So it's going to depend a lot. And this is just kind of backing up your point. It's going to depend a lot of what happens in those first 16 picks and what falls to the Browns. And maybe you could, if they're really targeting a guy, we do have a little bit of assets. I wouldn't mind them moving up. That's not a draft strategy I would usually employ. I definitely don't want to give 2020 picks to move up. But if you want to jump up 3 or 4 spots and you can package up some late picks or a
there's like one guy on that list for me personally.
Who's that?
Like Ed Oliver. People like, and mocks are mocks, and I think that this all disappears after the combine because I think he's going to destroy the combine. Yep. And then people are going to stop acting silly on draft Twitter about him going 13th, 14th in the draft.
Well, just remember, Derwin James went what last year?
17,
like,
that's true. That's a good example. Yeah.
So NFL proves that they are stupid at times.
If that happened, that would be the one guy I'd be like, go get him, because this is a guy I was convinced of his freshman year. After his freshman year, you already knew that whenever he came out, he was going to be in the top handful of players available. Period. So I definitely not changed my opinion about that. I'd like to see them avoid having to jump up, but if you get a special player, then I can see that happening.
See, I've broken down, so I don't want my list to be too big, so I broke it down to what positions I would actually draft here based on the players that would be available, and I broke it down. It's wide receiver, tight end, offensive tackle, defensive end, defensive tackle, and cornerback. So I think that we're pretty wide open. That's like almost every position, and that I think is that could be in play at 17. That's why it's just so hard. I've thought about it a couple of times, like how are we going to talk about what we want to take at 17? Because it's so wide open. I mean, there's so many players there that are good enough to take, and depending on who goes in front of them, you're going to be left with one of these guys, or you're going to move up. I don't hate that, it just depending on what it's going to take. I know we have some extra picks later in the draft.
I'm not really against moving back. If 17 can sometimes be a tricky spot. Sometimes you can move back to the end of the first or something where somebody wants to jump up into the, into that round. And you can get some assets maybe for next year. I'm not totally against it if there's not the perfect fit for them at 17. I don't think you just pick a dude at 17 because you have to. Don't be afraid to move back.
I don't think. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I was not as high on this edge class as some other people. Especially if we're kind of focused on what is reasonable to be there at 17. I'm not as high on the guys. It's not that there aren't good players. Like Polite is a very good player, but I don't think he's a fit at all for Cleveland. I think we kind of already have that guy in Denard Avery. So I'm not as big into edge. I like some of these D tackles, but my list is pretty close to yours. It just doesn't. I'm just not quite as high on that edge class. Somebody would have to drop. Somebody would have to drop for me to like that. But I like tackle, cornerback, tight end if it's Hawkinson.
Yeah, I'm sold on Hawkinson myself.
Yeah. So I got like a handful of guys
in there, Johnny. You guys just did a piece on waiting for next year. Your top cornerbacks, I believe. Yeah. Okay. What was your top 3 or 4 that you would be willing to take a shot at?
Well, like the guy that I run to the podium for is Murphy. He's my favorite corner in this class. He's very similar to Denzel Ward. I think he's going to crush it at the combine. He's a smaller guy. That's the only knock on him. That's the only thing that makes it not a truly elite corner prospect, I think.
Byron Murphy out of Washington?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he's a guy I will take over just about anybody who, is reasonable to project being there at 17. Once you get past that, I'm a little dicier, but, Greedy Williams and Baker out of Georgia, these are some good guys, but I just start to get a little bit more. Like, I'm fine with a Joe Juwan Williams or Julian Love or something like that, maybe in the second round. Once you get past Murphy, I know, there's some varying opinions on Greedy Williams. I think he's a very good player, but Byron Murphy is like the guy who would be the ultimate lure for me.
How much does it matter? I'm sorry. How much does it matter to you that, getting somebody that has a different body type than what Ward already has? Like you get Greedy Williams, you get that lanky, tall guy compared to Byron Murphy, who has the same body type that Ward. Does that matter to you?
I don't know that I would draft that way. Like ideally that would be the case. And you would like to have a bigger guy for sure, like to put on a Mike Evans or something like that. So I understand that. I just don't know how much that overrules the quality of player,
right.
Like I do think
players, yeah,
right. Like some people would tell you that Greedy is better than him, and so it's a no-brainer. I think Murphy is a good bit better in my eyes, so I'm not sure that I'd overrule it for that.
What I've seen, and I've watched a couple games of each, so I'm not like completely immersed in the cornerback game, like all the cornerbacks so far, but. Greedy, you get the press man. You get a lot of looks on that. And Byron Murphy in Washington, they like to run a lot of zone. So you don't see that as often. I think it's easy to go, oh, this guy plays press man. The NFL likes to play more press man. He's showing he can do it, and it's easier to make that that read, and I think that's part of the reason. Plus, people like the size. People look at that. But when I look at Murphy, I'm with you. Like the first thing I look at when I look at a corner is how are his hips, because that gets you in and out of those breaks. Like, it's about quickness. It's not about overall speed. It's about how quick can you break, because you have to react. Like the receiver knows where he's going. You got to react to that. So it's about your quickness, and your hips tell the story of how good you are there. And Murphy's got that. His reaction time is like split second. Greedy is just, he doesn't have that kind of flexibility in the hips that Murphy does. Not saying that he won't be good. I mean, there's all different kinds of players that, all different kinds of corners out there. But that's the first thing I key in. So I'm with you. Byron Murphy is my cornerback one. Plus, not only that, he comes up, man, and he'll lay the wood on you too.
Yeah, no, that's part of the reason he reminds me of Denzel Ward like that, because he almost has to watch out at his size. Just like Denzel Ward. Don't maybe bring that much wood. I don't want to see two concussions on you in the first year like Denzel got doing that. But yeah, he's a good tackler. And like you said, it's all in the hips. Like, I think that a good, easy way to explain why that makes sense is, if you watch a wide receiver, where he wins is when he gets a corner to turn his hips the wrong way, right?
Yeah.
That's how a wide receiver generally wins. And the smoother and quicker that you can make that transition as a corner, the more time that you have to diagnose what that wide receiver is doing. So that's where, I think that hip flexibility really translates to having better coverage. You got a guy who's slow to transition.
Yep.
He's going to do it faster, and he's going to get beat by more when he does get beat. But yeah, I love Murphy for those exact reasons, and I'd love to grab him there. I'm starting to zone in, but I'm very pleased to say that there are more tackles than I thought that could be available at 17. I thought 2 months ago you were talking about one guy. Now it seems like there's a group of, 4 or 5 that could get the job done if you don't have to have a left tackle. If you're happy with one of the bookends, then it's a pretty damn nice group to choose from.
Have you done the piece? This is I'm getting this from your waitingfornextyear.com, your rankings that you're working with Joe Gilbert, who we had on last year. Have you guys done a tackle one yet?
Not yet. So we just started this week. We did safeties on Tuesday, which that's a pretty boring one to start off with, because the Browns are probably adding one, but not anywhere near the top of the draft, likely.
Of course.
Sure.
And then we did, he's got a schedule. I think we do tackles maybe next week.
Oh, okay. Good. So everyone can follow that. That's Joe Gilbert and Colosimo on Waiting for Next Year. We're going to get them first here. So on Surviving the Season, what's your top picks there?
Oh, for offensive tackle. So it's a tough one. Like, I don't know that I'm 100% decided. I think I'm leaning towards Cody Ford as being my favorite tackle, but he's not a left tackle, so that's going to be a weird.
There's nothing wrong with that. Right. I mean, people overvalue the left tackle to the right tackle. I mean, the thing about it is you need, offensive line is not about one guy. That's why I want people to quit thinking about it that way. You need to have this group. That's why when people actually go, hey, bring Greg Robinson back, because if it's not broke, don't fix it. It makes sense. Like, because they played well as a group, and that's really what you want. You want to solidify that group and have the longer you play together, hopefully the better they get. But we need a right tackle. Cody Ford, if he's there and he's your guy, he's absolutely, just because he's right tackle, not left tackle, people shouldn't look at that anymore. I disagree with anybody that goes left tackle over right tackle no matter what. I think it shouldn't matter as much as people make it.
Cody Ford's out of Oklahoma, if you guys are looking for him.
Yeah, he's a mean one. Just in terms of who might be available for the Browns, whether it's the first or second round, you're probably looking at a Cajuste or I actually like Dillard.
Oh yeah,
that's one.
Andre Dillard, Washington State is where he's from.
Yeah, I think that's a good possibility for somebody. It's so hard to project whether that's a first or a second round guy, but excellent pass sets, not a mauler. So that'd be more of a left tackle, probably proposition. But
you mean Washington State doesn't have maulers at tackle?
Right.
It's not their priority. No.
The other guy I kind of like is that Max Sharping from Northern Illinois. He could probably play some right tackle too. That's a guy.
I haven't taken a look at him yet.
Yeah, check him out. He was at the Senior Bowl. That's where I first saw him. They had him, and I believe they had him next to Risner from Kansas State, who is just an absolute stud. And they were just locking down their side. And I was like, oh, I'm going to check this guy out. And then just why, the thing I look at again is just consistency. Don't make mistakes. And it's like you don't have to drive your guy into the ground every single time. I just want you to protect the quarterback. Keep your guy away from him, whatever you got to do. And he does a good job of that.
Who's your? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's it. I was just saying that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Who's your best case scenario for the Browns at 17?
Realistically,
Quinnen Williams.
A realistic expectation.
I think it's probably Byron Murphy for me. I don't foresee a better player with a reasonable chance to drop to 17. Some people may. This all depends on your perspective for what's reasonable for there, but I think Byron Murphy, like I said, is the guy that I'm sprinting and turning a card in for.
And worst case scenario, in that range where you would just be like, oh, God damn it. That's a tougher question.
That's a real tough question. Like where are you at with taking a linebacker in the first round? Are you okay with that? Like if they took Devin White, because I tend to think the more football I watch, it seems like there's certain positions to me that it's just like you can wait on this position. And linebacker's one of them. If they took Devin White, I'd be like, okay, I'm a huge Devin White fan. At 17, I'm like, I feel like we could do better there.
Right. I'm trying to think of the guy who's an actual bad football player. Devin White is a good player. He might be a poor value as a linebacker taking him there, but he's a very good football player. Yeah. So I wouldn't, be hitting the bottle after that pick. But if I'm trying to think of who do I just not like as a player.
I tell you, one for me is not Christian Wilkins. Who's the other defensive tackle for Clemson? He gets rated. Yeah. Dexter Lawrence is just the reason for me would be again like value. We do not need a 350-pound guy at 17, at pick 17. That would be another one for me. Even Christian Wilkins is he's Clemson defensive tackle, 3-tech. We need a 3-tech. When I watch him, I go, is what he does, is what he gives you. And I hear that he's an unbelievable leader, great guy off the field, like fantastic in the locker room, that kind of stuff. That's all pluses. But what he gives you on the field, is that enough to really be worth pick 17? Where you defend the run well, you're very good at that. You don't really get to the quarterback that often. You push the pocket some, but you're not like doing major impact. I look at it and I'm just like, I don't know if that's 17. I feel like I need way more impact than what Christian Wilkins gives you.
I'm with you on that, actually. I know it's not popular. I started saying this a few weeks ago, and I just get major pushback anytime I do. I'm just not.
He's a very good player.
Yeah, sure, he is. But does he have the impact of a really good corner or an offensive tackle? I don't know that he does. I think maybe I might be disappointed by an edge player as well. I mean, just any reasonable edge player that's available at 17. I'm not sure that I could think of any that I would be psyched to get.
Cleveland Farrell, not into him.
Actually, I like him a lot. I just I don't see him being there, but maybe he would be.
There's that group with Brian Burns, Polite, and the other. Who is it? Sweat. Yeah, they're kind of there. They're all different, but they're kind of grouped together, and they're going to be at that like middle of the first round, beginning of the second round type area. That's what I feel like.
That's the group I really don't like for the Browns. Okay. For the Browns, I'm not saying they're going to be bad players, but for the Browns, that probably would be my answer. Yeah. So if we ended up taking one of those edge players, I would be
not
less
that
than excited.
Yeah. Just in the interest of time, let's move over to free agency. Have you looked much, John, at somebody you'd like to bring in?
Well, I mean, it's hard to. Obviously, if Grady Jarrett gets to market, I'm jumping all over that.
Yeah, I don't think he is, unfortunately. It seemed like they were freeing up space for him.
We did have some news today. McCoy in Tampa I think Tampa is going to retain him. That was one me and Greg have talked about. Yeah.
I would like to specifically address defensive tackle, and there's a few guys but you just took two of them off the board for me.
Yeah, and well, that doesn't mean he's not available for trade either. Like, if they were smart, you wouldn't just be cutting a player that somebody would give you something for. And they're obviously not smart. They drafted what's his name over there, drafted a goddamn kicker in the second round. How he continues to have a job he's got to be the worst GM in the league. I'm sorry. He's just terrible. And how he keeps firing coaches and keeping his job is beyond me. Adam lives down there. He's a big fan of his. So, sorry.
He didn't just take one in the second round either. He didn't just take one in the second round. He traded up to do that.
He did trade up. That's right. Yeah. Adam's a big Tampa fan, so I say that.
Great Tampa fan. Yeah.
But I think if he's smart and you're not going to cut McCoy, you're going to you can get something for him. Like, his contract is like $8 or $10 million this year. He's worth that. I'm sorry. You look on the market, like that's what these guys are getting paid. He's not that over the hill. He's still producing. Well, what are they thinking?
At most, I think maybe you start lower than this, but maybe you end with giving them their comp pick early. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A year early. So here, I give them the Pats pick that we have, and here's your comp pick early, 1 year early for letting him go. Actually, they wouldn't get a comp pick at all because he's got a couple more years on his deal, so they'd have to keep him. So, maybe that's your leverage for paying less than that. But I think that, a fourth round pick probably gets that deal done, and I'll do that in a second.
I'll give you 2 fourths. Let's go. Let's do this thing. Sue would be another one, I guess, if the Rams don't re-sign him. He's another one on the list.
Yeah, Sheldon Richardson, I think, is another.
Oh, Sheldon Richardson. Nobody's really talking about him, but that's a good name. Like, remember, he was always known as the lazy guy, gets in trouble, but it seems like since he went to Minnesota, you really haven't heard much of that. He went to Seattle, then Minnesota, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that kind of ended. So, I mean, I haven't heard much about him being a bad citizen since then.
He's a younger guy, too, relative to, not Grady young.
28.
But, certainly younger than McCoy. I like him. I think there's options out there. That's like the one thing I would love to see them grab one of these DTs. I still want to draft a couple ultimately in the draft, but it'd be nice if we didn't have to start them, playing 70% of the snaps.
Oh, I'm with you 100%.
If the class is that deep, then you can sort of get a higher, you can get second round talent in the third round. You can get third round talent in the fourth round.
Yep.
And then maybe you get lucky with one of these guys. You bring him in with your coaches, and he works out and becomes a special player. So it's
you get one of these good
to flesh out, the kind of class that you're dealing with.
You get one of those really good 3-techs, and somehow Jeffrey Simmons falls to you in the second round. I'm sprinting that pick up there and taking that kid. Like, ACL is going to drop him. The kid's a freaking stud, though. Like, he's really good. I've been watching him. Like, that's what you're looking for in a 3-tech. Like, he's got the off-field issues. Like, I checked that out. Like, yes, there's, it's not good when you first look at it. Then you realize he's in a fight with his sisters and his mom. Okay, that changes things for me because I don't live in that world. Like, if my mom gets mad at somebody, she doesn't send you a Christmas card that year. I don't live in the world where my mom's out fist fighting people. But I imagine if I did, I would probably be fighting for my mom. I just imagine. So Jeffrey Simmons gets caught up in something, altercation with his sister and his mom, and since then has been nothing but a good citizen. They talk highly about him. He graduated at 3.0, like nothing but Jeffrey Simmons, he learned from his mistakes. and the kid's it plays a hell of a 3-tech. Like the kid's a stud. So that if you can get lucky enough to get one of these guys that we just talked about, you get lucky enough for him to fall to you in round 2. Boy, I think you're set up for the future there. All right, so that's some defensive tackles there. Anybody else on your list, John, free agent wise, that you're looking at?
I think not a ton actually. You know, there's some linebackers that we could look at, but I'm not totally sold on some of the prices that I've heard mentioned along with them. So, if they found the right value at with one of these veteran linebackers, I could see that. But I'm really
like,
there was one guy, Seattle.
Oh yeah. I heard he's going to get re-signed. What is his name? I read something because I looked that up, and now I can't think of his name either. And I'm thinking Bobby Wagner, of course, who's not the one that. Who is it?
Frank Clark?
No, Frank Clark's a defensive end.
Yeah. Okay.
He's an outside linebacker, actually.
Yeah.
KJ Wright. KJ Wright.
That's right. KJ Wright.
And he. What I was reading is that he said he wanted to play the rest of his career in Seattle and was pretty focused on it. But he's been really good because that was somebody I was like, ooh, I would love the Browns if they were able to get him. So yeah, I mean, if he becomes available and I was the Browns, I'd jump all over that one. I'm with you there.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd put some feelers out and see what Darby is looking for. He might be looking for too much, or he might be looking for a 1-year deal to reprove himself to get the big one. And I'd be very interested in giving him that 1-year deal if he wanted to, come in for, anything reasonable. 1 year is no big deal. I don't care what it is.
Now, I've heard people tell me like the Browns don't need we don't need cornerbacks. We got cornerbacks. You're not completely sold on them as these people are.
No, I would say that they're out of their minds. I don't know. I look at the cornerback room and I see just about everybody outside of Denzel Ward needing to get turned over at some point during the next 2 to 3 seasons. Dorsey did the whole, he did what he had to do last offseason. He just threw, the noodles at the wall to see what would stick, and we grabbed everybody that would sign with us, but those aren't great contracts outside of Mitchell. Mitchell's got a nice cheap deal, and he's fine, but he's not a long-term answer either. So, I think everybody else I'm looking to replace, and, I don't necessarily think you need to replace them with, veterans or all first-round picks or anything like that. But, I think I would be surprised if anybody but Denzel Ward is still on the roster as a cornerback in 2 seasons.
Dude, this is a tough part of the NFL because, you start to like these players, and we're basically on a time limit with all of them. You can like these guys, but dude, the NFL is all about replacing any kind of median contract with a 21 or 22-year-old that's coming out of the draft that can do it at 90% efficiency.
What did Sashi's board say? Always turn over the bottom of the roster, right?
And
constantly.
Don't pay for depth.
Yep. Yep.
So, and that's kind of what we had to do with that wide receiver room as a result of the position that we've been in. So, we can't afford to, pay, 4 veteran cornerback deals just to figure out what works.
Yep. Let's talk about that wide receiver room because we just signed Jalen Strong. So are we good now, John? We're good.
No.
All right, because I look on Twitter and people are like, "We got Jalen Strong. Things are looking up, man. Like, hey, he's a really good player." I'm like, when was like, he had that really good game against Marcus Peters back in college. That's what I remember. That's about it. Because since he's been in the pros, he scored some touchdowns. That's about it. He hasn't done much. So he comes in, but you still you have to sign Perriman and Higgins. What are you willing to pay these guys? Like, what is your priority here? Also, Perriman over Higgins or Higgins over Perriman?
Wait, hold on. We can do Higgins on a restricted free agent deal. Like, they control him.
Tender him.
Yeah,
Good
tender
point.
him. Yeah.
Yeah. So tender him for what, second round tag, which is probably what?
I would be looking to extend him. This year I think you could do it on a discount if you did it that way. But, I don't think that you have to force that. You always have that option just to tender him in the end. But if he, is willing to make a team-friendly 3-year deal or 3-year extension, I would say, I would be all about that, at a reasonable price. I think that's good for the team. It's good for him. I think, getting some money in his pocket. So
right,
I think it's a pressure-free situation.
Yeah, he's not going to get much more than 1 year guaranteed. Being a restricted free agent, he just has no bargaining power. And,
right,
and it sucks.
No
That's the league. Yeah,
right. He's got no leverage, but I think this is just a good opportunity for the team to see if there's something that works for both parties in this scenario, and you lock him up with an extension at a much cheaper price because, I think he's a very solid, third receiver, and I think that they have a good rapport, and I think it would be a good idea to see if you could lock him up for something extremely reasonable. How I would put it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. If you can get a nice deal without having to tender him, because then he becomes unrestricted next year, and then all of a sudden, if he has a good year, now you're dealing with, a Tyrell Williams contract where he wants to get paid because Baker made him look good. I mean, I like the kid, but if you can,
he had a good season last year. So if you just take that and extrapolate and give him the volume that he might get next year, I think, yes, you can put yourself in a situation where you're paying quite a bit of money. So I think they're incentivized to try and get some kind of a deal done this offseason.
Good point.
And that kind of stuff. So, and I like Perriman, but I can't imagine you have to pay him much, 2-year deal, or, at least an effectively 2 or 1 year deal for Perriman. I think you go ahead and keep him, but I think Perriman's a little bit of an example of some of the things that you're going to see with having a quarterback like Baker Mayfield. I don't know that we're going to see that with Strong, but at the same time, Perriman was, sorry to say, straight trash when we picked him up. This was not a guy that anybody was expecting anything out of, and he was able to produce. I think that's a little bit of Baker effect in action, and maybe you get something out of Strong or something like that. But either way, I think you're talking pretty small deals for those. But I think they should get them done. I think they should extend.
Do you let Perriman hit the market? I mean, he's 25, 26 right now.
It depends how big his head is, about like what his agent is thinking in his head. I think
he's got a bad agent. I can't remember. He's got what's his name, doesn't he? That frickin' T.O.'s agent.
Yep. Man, we're bad with names.
He's gonna really think he's supposed to get paid.
Rosenhaus?
Yeah. So we're dealing with Terrell Pryor. Pryor. We're doing a Pryor thing again here.
Could be. I'll just let him go then. I don't care. I just, I would prefer to bring him back on a reasonable deal. But like Greg Robinson was off the scrap heap. I can't, imagine if these guys just came in here for a couple of games, and then now all of a sudden want to be paid, as if they're completely different players than what their career shows, then you let them walk. But
the history of the NFL shows that if you, with Perriman, Robinson, in previous Brown seasons, these dudes would just graveyard here. But now we have a quarterback.
McCoy throwing to them.
Exactly. Yeah. You sort of bring up their value, which we have to remember this is free agency heaven. And God, we're talking about Mayfield like he's goddamn Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, but
he's better than Tom Brady.
Yeah, we're almost there where we're a destination for free agents because they can rebound their entire career here and then go get money somewhere else. But we as Browns fans, this is very difficult for us. We're not in this position very often. We have to be careful. You've got we're going to have contracts coming up where we have to repay are good players. So you've got to be careful with these tier players. Mayfield's going to get money. Garrett's going to get money. Like we've got to chill a little bit. We're going to lose players, and we just can't do this. Could have had them all the time.
Yeah, and well, the other thing is too. It's like how much you're gonna. Okay, if you can get them at a reasonable contract, you bring them back. But you have to get them at a contract that if you end up getting players that are better, you don't mind cutting them. And that's really for me for Perriman and Higgins, because I look at this draft and I go, man, there's guys to be had here that are better, that are just better players. Like the draft is stacked. I don't know, John, how much have you covered much of the wide receivers at all?
I have.
Okay, yeah. So maybe you can give me a couple of names of guys that you like, but I think this is one of the strongest wide receiver drafts from top to bottom. Maybe there's, outside of DK Metcalf looks to me like a guy who could be all-world type wide receiver. Like he's super raw, but I think he has the potential because of athleticism. And then there's a drop-off after that, but it's a deep, deep list there. So give me a couple of names of guys that you like.
I will. Give me one second to back up a little bit on that before I get into those. But, I have a little bit of extra insight on this. I grew up a Packers fan. And so I I watched Brett Favre almost his entire career at Green Bay. And if Baker is as good as we all want him to be, this is what we're going to see with these wide receivers. I can't tell you how many wide receivers left as free agents out of Green Bay that owed 75% of their new paycheck to Brett Favre.
Yeah, and then go somewhere else and not do a whole lot of anything. Yeah,
you saw it all the time. Saw it all the time in Brett Favre's career, especially. Now in Rodgers, they've actually maintained and had better receivers than they ever really had than when Brett Favre was playing, outside of Sterling Sharp early in his career. Like he was playing with scrap heap guys, not all the time, you had Freeman, whatever, but and those guys, but I saw it over and over and over. You're going to be able to do more with less when you have a guy like Baker Mayfield. I do think that's going to be the case. You just can't get too tied up, and Browns fans are wanting to do that, with Terrell Pryor was a perfect example of that. People were freaking out that you didn't give the guy, $12 million a year or whatever he wanted to stay after 1 year. And Terrell will tell you that was a mistake on his part. So, anyway, moving on from there, I agree with you 100% on this draft. This draft is great. I think the last several years have been, similar to this really, where there's just these really nice players in that meat of the draft. The second, third, fourth round, into the fifth round even, where there's just really good quality players that I think you can get. I think that there's no reason to kind of tether ourselves to this ideal of a Julio Jones or something like that. I'm not very interested in DK. He just doesn't have the production for me, and I just can't get past it. And I'll admit that looking at the workout pictures lately just screams David Boston to me. But,
yeah. That's the NO Explode, that nitric oxide stuff that he's using. That pumped up. That's probably what it is. Little Cialis. You put a little Cialis in before your workout. You get that major pump. You take your picture, and then you're good to go. So that might. We'll see when he gets, because when I looked at that one picture, first of all, it looked like it was photoshopped. So I agree. Like, well, it doesn't even look like it. He looks. Everybody else it looks tiny compared to him. But we'll see when he gets to the combine. I imagine he's not going to be that swollen up. And a lot of it had to do with working out right before that picture, because there actually was one today with him and AJ Brown. He doesn't look as big.
It. Yeah, you're right. I saw it.
Doesn't look as big.
But yeah, I think
and let a half a tab of Cialis, go work out and see what happens.
All right, so looking at this group of wide receivers, I don't know which guys have really caught your eye, but Deebo Samuel, I know he's kind of out. He's right out. probably earned a ticket out of Value Town because of what he did at the Senior Bowl, but I still like him.
What do you think is value though for him? Like he looked like a second round guy, I bet. And when I agree. I would be surprised if he sneaks into the first. I'd be really surprised.
Right. No, I meant like if he was, if people were thinking about him as a third round or later guy before the Senior Bowl, then he's definitely outside of that. But still worth where he'll be picked, I think. So Deebo Samuel looks really good to me. Andy Isabella at a certain level looks good to me. I'd like to stay away from body catchers, but he's got pretty much everything else going on for him. As long as we're not talking about him in the first round, I'm with it. There's late round guys like Jazz Ferguson that are fantastic receivers that you can get probably in the, I don't know where he'll end up going. Maybe it depends on what he does at the combine. He blows up at the combine, that changes things, but as a fifth round guy that has every ability to be a fantastic receiver.
Yeah, a lot of people are going to have to look him up. Northwestern State is Jazz Ferguson, so he's not division. What are they? 1AA or whatever? They play like. Don't they play? I think they played like where Carson Wentz played college at, like South Dakota State or whatever.
Right. So you're looking at FCS, but
okay.
Go ahead and take a look at. It's not going to take you long to see what he's got going for him. Oh yeah, he's got a lot of ability going for him. I think he's got maybe some issues off the field. We'll see, which just should explain to you that he's going to be directly on John Dorsey's radar. So
okay, that's the way we have to do our scouting. Who has issues? Okay, this is who's on the board. Preston Williams and
Preston Williams is another one I expect to be
Colorado.
fully. Yep, from Colorado State. So I think there's just a whole handful of guys that there's probably, I won't exaggerate here, I think there's 15 guys that I would be perfectly happy with the Browns adding from the second to the fifth round.
Yeah.
So, I don't think we have to rush that. I don't think there's any reason to think that we just got to upgrade it in the first round or whatever the case, or as soon as possible. I think we really can take our time with it and add at least 2 receivers to the room. It would be nice if they didn't have red flags. I don't want to jam-pack one position group with red flag players. I'm already crossing my fingers that Antonio Callaway doesn't do anything stupid this offseason. I would like to not have to worry about 2 or 3 other players, but I think 2 to 3 extra wide receivers just provides excellent competition, and this is a great class to do it, and our draft slots really line up for that.
Yeah, there's a couple little guys too, like if Zacchaeus, Penny, the kid from Virginia, Penny, where they're kind of in that. I'm not saying they're going to be Tyreek Hill, but they're in that Tyreek Hill mode of smaller guys. And the Zacchaeus guy, I don't know if you watched him much, but a lot of like jet sweeps with them. They give him a lot of screens, and he just makes plays. He's a quick little guy. And that Greg Dortch from Wake Forest is another slot guy. Unfortunately, we're overpaying a slot guy right now, but there's some slot guys in this draft that caught my eye this year, and I'm like, man, AJ Brown is, it's basically Jarvis Landry on steroids.
Can we just add can you just add good players? Without the I remember Cooper Kupp, people talking about as a slot. And then they just bring him in, and he's productive and useful. I think sometimes you can't have enough weapons.
True.
Whether the Browns want to add a tight end in free agency or if they draft a tight end, people are like, "Oh, we don't need a tight end." Dude, it's just an offensive weapon.
Yep.
I think
you still have to have a way to use them, and sort of the way. I'm sorry for cutting you off there, but Adam, but the way you have to use them, you have to think what are you going to do with 3 guys that are like Jarvis Landry that can't separate?
Yeah. You don't want a bunch that you can't. Right. Nobody can move outside. Jarvis Landry can move outside if you have a dude that can only work inside.
Well, plus we have an out on his contract after next year. So I think if you want to take advantage of that out, then we should be drafting guys this year
again
to give us that option,
so that they can scheme up and then figure out what we're trying to do here in Cleveland, and then be useful in their second year. So yeah, this is shit that's so out of our wheelhouse because we're usually dealing with like we got to get dudes that have to play today.
Right.
It's so difficult with a dude like Corbett. People just like, what he didn't play. It's like, no, we're okay now. Like we're you know.
And that's driving me nuts too. It's like because there's a difference. I know that the pick kind of sucked in terms of where you picked him and the position that he plays. That I understand it kind of sucks. It wasn't the best value in terms of ability plus your team needs. But he was a good player, and to see him continually kind of get lumped in with Chad Thomas, it drives me nuts. Like Chad Thomas is not a good player. He's not going to be a good player. So it's not the same. All right. Like Corbett was a good player, and I expect him, even if he's delayed a couple of years, to eventually fill a good role on this team.
Yeah. We talked about that too. Like, okay, the reason why Chad Thomas wasn't a good pick, the moment that it got picked, we sounded our horn, the draft horn, where we were super not happy about, we were upset about it. Yes, thank you. And that's the reason is because he doesn't have the traits to do it. And you're drafting a guy in the third round, should be a starter, and he doesn't have the traits. It's not the case for Corbett. Corbett, it's different, man. Like you're on the offensive line, you have three guys. They tried him at tackle. It doesn't work. You're not beating out Bitonio. You're not beating out three guys that are in place that were studs, Treader and Zeitler. It's not happening. So you wait your turn. Eventually, these guys are going to become too expensive to keep around, or they're going to, reach the part where hey, it's time to move out. Then you move in. It's fine. And what we're going to do now, the draft is so much different than where we were in these past 3 years. Now we're drafting for that depth to hopefully fill in 2 years, where we talked about a little bit ago. You don't pay for depth anymore. You draft for depth.
You draft.
And then,
yep.
And then they move into starters. That's what the Steelers do. Now, you look at the Steelers and you go over the history. Well, when they were really good, they're starting to fade a bit. But you look back, 5 years ago, their first round picks were lucky to even, to start games. Like if they started half the games in a season, that was like, hey, good. Hey, we finally got our guy in there because somebody got injured. They give them time to develop. They don't rush them. They don't put all that pressure on them. When you're ready to play, you play.
Baltimore's defense is the same way.
Yeah. And that's what good teams do. And people don't know what it's like to be a good team. So quit, expecting these guys to hop in right away and play.
You sort of want to get to the point where you get a bad draft grade. Because you're draft, they're like, oh, they didn't draft well this year. Yeah, it's not sexy because you didn't pick a bunch of starters, but you're filling in the spots on the team that you need to fill in, and then that's a D draft. And then 5 years down the road, we look back at Kuiper's D draft for the Steelers, and you go, well, all these people play a role on this team, and they're on the team still, like. That's amazing, in the age of, where the NFL is, that if you have draft picks that are even on the team after a few years, it's amazing. So it's just, it's such a different position that we're coming into these drafts with. And I can't even be more excited about it.
Yeah, it's going to be an adjustment period, but it's certainly there's no argument that it's not a place that it's frustrating to deal with, say, when you write an article or something and you get the responses and, that kind of stuff. I don't expect Browns fans to kind of get that necessarily right now. They're going to have to get used to it, but it is the place that winning teams are at. And it seems like we have a ton of cap space right now, but the majority of it is rollover, which is not real. It's 1 year. It's a way to front load. It's a way to do those types of things, but people don't realize if you take away the fluff of the rollover cap space, once we sign our rookies and maybe sign Greg Robinson and Perriman and, get an extension on Higgins, we're not all that far from the actual cap in contracts that we, have going at the moment. So, I think it's going to be a little bit of shock value. People think, oh, we got like $80, $90 million in space, but it's the majority of that is a 1-year deal
that disappears real quick when you got to give Garrett, $125 million. You got to give
absolutely.
Yeah. That's a great point, actually. And now we have another CBA coming up in next year, 2020. So we got everything could be restructured, and we could throw everything out the door of what we've done for the past 4 years, and that's going to piss me off.
Right. At the very minimum, it's a variable for a team, like kind of looking at a 3-year plan.
And the worst part is we're going to be staring down the Super Bowl, and they're going to fucking strike, or they're going to get locked out. We're going to lose our minds. We're going to go crazy.
Think about that.
Just like the year we should have won the World Series.
94. Yeah. That's when Lofton is batting 350, and I remember
everybody was juiced to the gills. There was not a clean syringe in the whole clubhouse that year. I'm just joking. They weren't juicing.
That team was insane, though. That team was insane.
Quote unquote, allegedly.
There was definitely no au jus going on.
Please do not sue Surviving the Season podcast. We have zero money.
It was a level playing field. That's all I'm going to
say. 94 might have been early for that.
That's a real thing in the business of signing free agents, or deciding where to use your rollover cap, or deciding, we had the 89% rule and all that bullshit. Those are probably going to go away. I think the NFL needs to keep the rookie scale, but I'm pretty sure the players they don't want to do it. I have a feeling.
Actually, now that we're not drafting first anymore, I hope they get rid of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Now that we're a little better.
No, it used to be an anchor, tied around the necks of the guys who drafted top. That's a bad thing for teams to have the old system. I think that you're going to have to. You might even have to up the 90% to 95 or something in order to keep that rookie scale. That might be the compromise that they have to make. But teams should do that. I mean, there's no way in hell that you want to be signing veteran type deals to first rounders who hit at best at a 50% rate. That means 50% of the time, you are paying big time guaranteed dollars to people that 50% of the time will provide almost nothing for you.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, the players can't give away, like the players got, what do we have? Like 12 full contact practices before we start the season. We're down to almost no practice. We're down to no contact. The players cannot get any more on that level. I think the best thing that the players might try for in the new CBA is at least to get that 5th-year option guaranteed for skill, injury,
they're going to do something with that suspension too. Like if you get suspended, they're
going to have to do something with
it. Because you can get all your guaranteed money taken away for being suspended for hitting a guy, too many times with your helmet or something.
I think it's all about that that big number, the percentage. I think those players I think that's their best route.
It's amazing.
Just fight for more of that top percentage of the total revenue.
Sort of like the NBA getting 51%. Like the 51% of the revenue has to go to the players, and then
I think that is if I was the players' reps, that's what I would be focused on. Just get a bigger piece of the pie, and everything will flow down from that. Everything else almost doesn't matter to me. Really, it's all about. Can we get it to 55%? Can we get it to 60%? Can we do, that's where I would focus. And those other things are kind of meaningless distractions that.
The one thing though, when you look at the actual, you go to Sport Track right now and check out all the how much salary cap everybody has. There's very few teams that are in trouble. Most teams don't spend anywhere near what they're supposed to.
But that's because of the rollover that John was talking about earlier. Yeah.
Right. And that might be what the players attack. Like you got to start spending more of it because is that 90% now? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So combination, right? So you bump up that total by a couple percent and then bump up that 90 to 95 on a 3-year rolling window.
Yep.
Or whatever the case may be.
Well, you have and with the NBA, so the NBA, everything's guaranteed. I think the NFL falls apart with guaranteed like you can't sign Landry to a $75 million deal over 5 years if that's all guaranteed. He's never going to get that money. So because the Browns know, all right, we can give him a $75 million deal and it looks great. His agent can tweet that out, but the Browns know Landry's deal is basically 2 or 3 years. So I think the players are going to attack that also, where they need some leverage because all these 5-year deals become 2 or 3 year deals in the league, and then because injuries play such a big part as well, you know.
Mm-hmm. I just don't know like how far they're going to get down that road. If they, they should push a little bit on that, but. Like I said, I think that you're better served going after that bigger piece of the overall pie and then hoping that kind of flows down like that. Rather, the NFL's just never gonna.
Yeah, we're in a tricky situation here. And then the Browns are going to be dead square because I think, right now the Browns are like one of the top teams in the AFC North. So we're sort of in a bad situation to run into a goddamn labor dispute.
I'm looking forward to the scab draft of 2020.
Oh God, come on! We can do the.
Is that what they call
replacement?
Yeah, the scab draft.
You think we can get Keanu to come quarterback?
That'll be all the AAF guys coming back. Trent Richardson back in Cleveland.
I never did. I didn't even watch a snap of it. Has that been any good? Did you guys watch any of that?
The play has been not very good. Quarterback play has been horrendous. Yeah. But it's been the football is better. Like it's not like they're letting guys hit. One, thank you for actually letting people tackle football. And then the instant replay, they take you into the instant replay and they, put a mic on the guy watching the instant replay, telling you exactly what he's thinking, his thought process behind the whole thing. So then when you go back, you don't have to sit there the whole time, and they're going, I don't know. It looks like it's a catch to me. What do you think? It could be. Maybe not. Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe not. Put a fucking mic up there and just let us hear what the guy's actually saying. And we'll have, it makes it way more interesting. So there's good things I think the NFL is actually going to have to go to. Like, there's no way you can just keep going with the same thing without, the same product that you've been putting out when it's obviously that much better by putting a microphone in front of the instant replay guy, for instance.
Sure.
Well, that'll be all part of the labor negotiations too. Johnny C, give me some positive outlook for the Browns this year. We're buried in Browns' positive outlook. I mean, everyone's basically expecting the Browns to make the playoffs or like what. So actually, don't give me the positive. Give me the negative spin. What's the worst thing that can happen to this team? Maybe with the new coach, or it doesn't work out. Like, where are you worried with the 2019 Cleveland Browns?
I would say, cop out as just this is. I think injury is probably the worst thing that could deal with us. Like, one of the things that is still rough with the Browns, that even with a really good, our depth situation is terrible in most spots. So, if we have one of those years, which you see happen often with NFL teams, we have one of those injury-riddled years, even with a good offseason, we're not prepared for that. So it doesn't even have to be.
Goes down, we're done, right?
Sure, that's the obvious one. But even if he doesn't, if we just have one of those ones where, like a Charger season that they seem to happen like every year, where we just have multiple people go down, we just don't have the depth to compete like that. So where I think it's fair to expect playoffs this year, I think that's a reasonable expectation is playoffs. If we're on the lower third in terms of injuries this year, even with a good draft class and off season, we're not going to be able to deal with that like some of the entrenched winners of this league. So I think that's what we have to worry about. I think we have to be smart with our off-season program. I think we have to really do the best job that we possibly can to address this depth situation. Like the defensive line situation that we were in this year, we were lucky that Garrett and Ogunjobi got out of the season without serious injuries. Right?
Yeah,
like that was
1,100 snaps later.
Just absolutely ridiculous. All right, so we have to throw a lot of resources into that. We need some free agents, and we need multiple draft picks to get the depth necessary. And we have to have a defensive coordinator that's smarter about deploying those players, because I guess it's really just a function of youth, right? That 22-year-old Myles Garrett could get through a season like that. That should never, ever happen again. So I think that's my biggest fear, is that no matter how good an off season we have, no matter how smart an off season that we have, if we have just one of those snake bitten years, then I don't think we're prepared to handle that and still make the playoffs.
Greg, same question.
Oh, I think we kind of talked about it. That was my biggest thing, was obviously the injuries. The other thing would be, what if Freddie has a tough time just picking up the ins and outs of everyday head coaching, which he's never done. I don't think this is going to be an issue, but I mean that's one of the worst things that could obviously happen. Right. What if Freddie gets out there and he doesn't
0-3? Well, how does Freddie deal?
How does Freddie
that?
react?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like when the pressure hits, because right now it's been since Freddie's been in there, everybody's been happy with what's happened. When a little turmoil hits, how does he react? What does he do if players are getting in trouble? How does he react to that? How does he react if players are missing meetings? That kind of thing. How is he going to maintain holding down the locker room? The other thing would be, how's he going to be as a game manager? We don't know. We just don't know. I mean, I expect him to be good. I expect him, because I think he's a smart coach, obviously, and I expect the Browns to have somebody in his ear and be helping him with timeouts and that sort of thing. But what if he's just terrible at it? There's unknown there with the coaching staff. What are we going to get out of Wilkes? How's he going to be? I've been watching some of his defense. He's pretty aggressive. Is he Greg Williams? No, but he's pretty aggressive. Are we going to see a lot of that? And a lot of it's going to be based around what kind of players he has, I imagine, and it's just a lot of unknown with coaches we don't know. I think that's the biggest thing behind injuries. Injuries being the major one, and that's for every team in the league. Well, you get hit with the injury bug, there's nothing you can do. I mean,
yeah, my sort of worst fear is like a 7-9. You just missed the playoffs, and then everyone we like Mayfield plays good enough to be so everyone goes, oh yeah, they're a playoff team, and then Dorsey panics. And we go into like an off season where they feel like they got to spend to catch up.
Yeah,
I think that's going to be that could be a 5 to 10 year disaster of trying to pull that back, and we're still doing a podcast, just going, why did we miss here? Like, how did this happen? I think everyone's got to like. Have a reasonable expectation. Like playoffs are obviously available. The AFC North is kind of in turmoil. The Pittsburgh Steelers are a fucking disaster up there.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is that Baltimore, like a lot of people aren't talking about this. I'm working on a series right now that should come out soon. It's kind of going to be titled Eyes on the Enemy, and it'll just be an article about our division foes once a week. Just kind of giving a State of the Union. One thing that a lot of people don't see yet with Baltimore is they're very well constructed, And them shedding Joe's contract makes them surprisingly flexible. And so they're just as I think the difference between Baltimore and Cleveland is we'll have that advantage of a rookie quarterback deal, but you don't really actually get benefits from that unless you're close to the cap, right?
True.
Like until you get close to the cap to where, your talent level, is exceeding the money that you're spending, until you get to that point, you're just saving cash. The Browns are $80 million under the cap. They have no actual benefit from Baker playing $20 million above his contract level. Baltimore is ready to capitalize on that. Yeah. They will immediately capitalize on it. They'll keep players that they would have lost. They will have the opportunity to sign players that they would normally not have. So I definitely agree that Pittsburgh's turmoil is something that I'm, celebrating and enjoying watching unfold. But Baltimore is a dangerous opponent that I think right now is lying in the weeds, and I think people are underrating a little bit like what that represents, them being able to shed that salary.
Yeah, it's literally the Broncos fucking us again 22 or 23 years later. Like, how many times are they going to fuck us? I cried 86, 87, I was a 10-year-old kid just crying. Like, I can't believe we had the fumble and the drive and all this bullshit. And the Broncos are like, oh, yeah, we'll take Flacco out of the AFC North.
And give you something for it, It's just like, I thought for sure they're going to cut him, which...
Fucking asshole, Elway. God, he's the worst. What a stupid signing. What a stupid trade. Fuck Elway.
Is he just not like the ultimate example? I mean, we've seen it a lot in basketball with, like, say, Michael Jordan and stuff like that, but he's like the ultimate NFL example of, just because you were good at being a quarterback. And this speaks to, like, a lot of Browns fans who, have been enamored with this idea of, like, bringing in Peyton Manning or something. Look at Elway. Look at Horseface over there. Bumble over the quarterback position. Like he never played it. If you look at his quarterback position, decisions, outside of luring in Peyton Manning, he's just been a disaster.
He's got also. This is what I don't want Dorsey to get to, where it's just like, oh, we're an 8-8 team, so I'm going to just panic, and then I'll throw assets at bad players or bad quarterbacks. Like,
but the thing
I feel like Dorsey can get there easily because I just don't trust him right now.
The thing is, like, until you have your quarterback, like, there's no point in being in panic mode because it ain't gonna happen for you anyways. Like,
right.
And they obviously don't. Like, I don't know what the hell they're thinking. Going back to the Baltimore thing, the one thing I would say about Baltimore is I agree with you 100%. Like, they're always good. They're just a tough team, good coach, that kind of thing, and they're set up well for the future here. Is Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, has to take a big leap forward as a thrower. I think
that's a big part of the equation.
Yeah, he hurts them big time when he throws a ball. He was bad this year, and he's dynamic with his feet. But guess what? You get hurt running in the league when you're a quarterback, and that's fine. You can keep running. Even if they go to the playoffs next year and he wants to run 16 games and they get to the playoffs, great. The following year, guarantee you're not going to keep doing that. Eventually, it's going to catch you. It always does. And it's the injury bug's going to hit him at some point. If he does not develop into a pocket passer, it's going to be an issue for the guy.
No, there's no question they have to evolve that offense drastically from what we saw this last year. So that's a huge part of the equation. I 100% agree. It definitely depends on how you see the outlook for Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
I'd probably view him on a more positive light than most people. I think that if they take it seriously, they'll be able to do that as far as evolving this offense and still kind of slowly. You don't have to like go from from running an option offense to an air raid or something like that with it.
Sure.
But I think that if they're working on it correctly, and they have coaches like Greg Roman and those guys who have gone through the Kaepernick years and those kind of things, they have a path to evolve that offense. And but you're right. He has a long way to go, and there's a lot of projection built into that idea that Baltimore is in a good spot.
Yeah, and they turned that offense over late too, and they still made the playoffs. Like it was Flacco's team until it wasn't, and then all of a sudden they just went, oh, okay, Jackson's our quarterback, all right, and they kind of fixed it where he won a bunch of games. So yeah, I don't know.
They're just they're a solid organization. I mean, they're just a good built team, and Harbaugh's a good coach. They're going to be there. And
I feel
honestly,
a lot better if they would have got rid of him, like they were talking about.
Yeah, me too.
A third of the way into the season, I'd feel great. If John Harbaugh had gotten the axe and they moved on to some random replacement coach.
And the other thing is, Cincinnati got bit hard by the injury bug last year, and I mean, who knows what this coach is going to be that they bring in? They should probably be in rebuild mode, but when they're healthy and they're completely healthy, they've got good players on that team. That's not even in question for me. Like, you can hate on Andy Dalton and be like, well, he's not great, yeah, but he's good. He's good enough to win games, and maybe he's never going to win you a Super Bowl, but it makes a tough game for the Browns regardless. It's not
right, and ultimately we're looking at a tough division. You know what I mean? Like even if Cincy isn't a 12-win team that you're going to project to win the division, they're not a third, let's say a third or fourth place team in a general NFL division. You know what I mean? Like we're still, like, it's still a problem for the Browns to have three solid teams. Even if they're just solid teams, it just makes it all that much harder for a 30-year schedule, or more than third.
Imagine being the Rams.
You can get a wild card out of the NFC South with 7 wins. You can't do that in the AFC North. Like teams can. Everybody's going to win 6, 7, 8 games. Like you're not gonna trick the NFL in the AFC North. It's just not.
Imagine being the Rams in the NFC West. You have Arizona, who's absolutely terrible. Okay, you got what's the other terrible team over there? San Francisco. Who they're terrible because Garoppolo gets injured, but still terrible. And then Seattle is nowhere. If it wasn't for Russell, if Russell Wilson wasn't there, they would win 0 games. Like, the guy should be MVP every year, in my opinion. The guy's doing magic out there in Seattle, and
especially with Schottenheimer as the coordinator. I mean, you're putting ball and chains on him, and he's still getting into the playoffs. It's amazing.
But yeah, like, we don't have that cakewalk, man. Like, we have good teams in our division, and it's tough. So it's going to be it's an uphill battle for us, but we still have the talent. This is the first time we can honestly say the talent is there, and I like Freddie enough to go, hey, this is the coach is in place, offense is in place. I don't know what Steve Wilkes is going to give us yet, but I'm hoping for the best. I imagine it can be as good as what Greg Williams gave us, if not better. But we'll see when we get there. We'll cross that bridge then.
Johnny Cosmo, last word on your expectations for the season, and we got to get you out of here. We're already on OT, so go ahead and wrap it up for us. What are you looking forward to this year?
I'm looking forward to just watching Baker day in and day out, as far as waking up every Sunday with a hope for a win. It's very exciting for me. I expect big things. I expect Sundays to be fun. Let me put it that way. That's the simplest way I could put it. Sundays are going to be fun for an entire year next year, as long as Baker is healthy and upright. And I expect playoffs. I think that's a reasonable expectation, aside from disaster happening, just as far as team-wide injuries and those types of things. But I loved these last 8 games probably more than any other Browns season that I've ever been through, and I can't wait for this one. And I think we've got every chance available to be playing in the playoffs, and I'm not sure that I'm ready for it, to be honest.
No doubt.
It's coming.
I'll just be totally honest. I don't know that I'm really ready for what that's like, waking up and it's an AFC championship game. I can't put myself in those shoes just yet.
Dude, I was just thinking wild card weekend, and I got goosebumps. I have goosebumps right now thinking about week 1 of the playoffs, and we snuck in at 9-7.
I get it. I
It's
really
funny.
do.
It's funny because people actually in the second half of the season, people send us messages like, "I kind of miss you guys yelling about our team." Everything's happy now. We got to change the name from surviving the season to what goes with enjoying the season or something. I mean, what goes with what can we do? We can't be surviving the season anymore. We're actually going to be good. It'll be nice.
So we got a guest. We got about 5 minutes to get you the fuck out of here. Philip Butler, thanks for the mail. First, I thought you guys had a really good take on the Korean hunt stuff. Thanks, Phil. We tried to cover that, from both sides, and we tried to give a nuanced position there. I really appreciate it. He's got a question. I'm curious about your thoughts on Jarvis Landry. Specifically, you said in the last show, sorry, it was obvious that Todd Haley was force-feeding him the ball over and over. I just wonder how much him being complete trash the first half of the season had to do with the way they set up the offense around him. I thought he improved the second half of the season. What do you think? And Johnny Cosmo is going to answer this for you, Phil. Thank you for the fucking emails.
Thanks for answering our emails, John.
No, this one is actually something I've already given thought to, so it worked out because Mike Bodie over at Waiting for Next Year kind of made me have to assess the difference between the first and second halves of that season. And I'll tell you right now that Jarvis with 100 targets is far more palatable for the offense as a whole than Jarvis with 160, which is, I think, what he was on pace for. After I think he even got close to that over the whole course of the year. So I think that you can improve his value. And unfortunately, God, this is a terrible thing to say, right? You can improve Jarvis's value to the team as a whole by lowering the amount of targets.
Yeah.
And I think that's just where they went the last 8 games. And I think that they should do that. You're never going to get to a point where he's worth what he's paid. But I think that opportunity cost is a real thing. I think that's what people don't really understand. You can't, giving Jarvis 60 less attempts or 60 less targets over the course of a season makes your team better on the whole because those targets are going to people who are doing better with those things. So, I think that there's reason to expect a better season in 2019 for Jarvis. That doesn't mean he's ever going to be a good value at that number. But I do think that you can expect a better season.
Greg, you have anything?
No, I couldn't have answered it any better. No, thank you for answering our mail.
Thanks, Phil. His PS is a couple of us guys who listen to your show are going to a game or two next year. If you guys are there, we'd love to buy you a beer.
Hey, I'm
for the content.
I'm up for free beer always.
And
nice.
We do have some special news because I think Johnny Cosmo is moving back to Cleveland. You going to hit some games next year, son?
I'm going to be in Westlake.
I don't think you were supposed to announce that, were you, Adam?
Probably not, but I don't.
Cut it out.
I don't think that my work listens to this podcast, so I think it'll be fine. Yes, I'm heading to Westlake, and I'm definitely going to be enjoying some games. And you guys know that I brew beer, so if you guys come into town, it's about time that you guys got some benefit out of that. So
right on. So Phil, hook up with Greg and Johnny. When we get into the next season, we'll hit you up for that. Johnny, where can people find your content?
So I'm writing for waitingfornextyear.com. Get a couple of pieces a week there. And then we have the worst name podcast in the Browns podcast world in This BelieveLand is Your Land. But we do have great co-hosts, and people would enjoy that. So check that out if you have time as well.
It's actually an awesome podcast, but it's kind of hard to find because if you search This BelieveLand is Your Land, you won't find it. You guys are part of a podcast network, so you got to kind of go around.
Right, it's part of the SB Nation's podcast. So to find us, you'll either have to follow me on Twitter, and I'll have that out there. But if you subscribe, it is part of a network. So you would get everything that comes out of that channel versus just our podcast. So that is a good point. But if you go to SB Nations, that's where you can subscribe to our show.
What's the network that you guys are on?
I think it is just called SB Nation.
Oh, okay.
Let me see here. Yeah, I think that's about right. So
Cool.
Browns SB Nation, you should be able to find that channel.
Awesome, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, anytime, guys. I had a really good time. I'm glad that we had extra time than we thought originally. So hopefully this is a good show, and anytime, guys.
Yeah,
Thanks.
we can do way overtime.
Oh, good.
Greg, anything else?
No, you can hit us up on Twitter at STS Podcast. Our email is
survivingtheseason@gmail.com, patreon.com/STS Podcast, twitch.tv/STS Podcast. These are not live. When we have a guest, we can't do it live on Twitch because we don't know how to do it yet. We are working on that on the back end. Soon to come, draft show. Everybody follow Johnny. He's one of my best friends. He's fucking great content, and he's just a cool dude. So hit him up. #RoadRedemption. Greg, tell him what we say.
keep on enjoying.